When I found out what my sister had been saying about me behind my back, I couldn't believe my ears. I had always thought we were close, that no matter what, we would always have each other's backs. But I was wrong. I found out the hard way that some people, even family, will do whatever it takes to tear you down, especially when they think you have something they want. It all started with a casual conversation, or so I thought, at dinner one evening. Emily, my sister, seemed to be in a particularly good mood. She was chatting away, telling me how proud she was of me for all my recent accomplishments. But then, she slipped up. I didn't know it at the time, but those innocent words would be the catalyst for everything that happened next. "You've really been going places lately," she said, her voice laced with a strange sweetness. I nodded, thinking she was genuinely happy for me. But then, just as casually, she dropped a bombshell that made my stomach churn. "You know, sometimes I wonder if your success is really all yours, or if it's just that Dad's name has always opened doors for you." It was a passing comment, one I didn't fully register at first, but the seed of doubt was planted. The following days were a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about those words. What did she mean by them? Was she implying that I hadn't worked hard enough on my own? That somehow, my career, my success, was just a result of who my father was? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I had worked my whole life to build the reputation I had. I wasn't just riding on my father's coattails. So, why was Emily trying to tear me down like this? I decided to confront her, to ask her what she meant. But when I brought it up, she played it off like it was nothing. "Oh, I was just joking," she said, smiling sweetly. But I saw through it. The smile never reached her eyes. Something was off. It didn't take long for me to realize that Emily's words were part of a bigger plan. I started hearing rumors. Subtle, quiet whispers that seemed to follow me wherever I went. They were coming from people I thought were my friends, people I trusted. Slowly I started to see the pattern. Emily was spreading these rumors about me. And what was worse, she was making sure they reached the ears of everyone who could potentially ruin my reputation. At first, I was in disbelief. Why would she do this to me? Why would my own sister, the person I trusted the most, try to destroy me like this? But as I dug deeper, I uncovered something shocking, something that would change everything. Emily wasn't just jealous of my success. She had a secret of her own. A secret so deep, so damaging, that if it came to light, it would completely shatter the life she had built. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just about jealousy or sibling rivalry. Emily had been trying to ruin me to cover up her own lies, her own mistakes. She thought if she could make me the villain, no one would ever question her. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had been hurt, humiliated, and betrayed. But now, it was time for her to face the consequences. And I was going to make sure the truth came out, no matter what it cost me. I couldn't sleep that night. Emily's words kept echoing in my mind, and no matter how hard I tried to shake them off, they stuck with me. I had always been proud of the life I built on my own. I wasn't just another name or someone's legacy. I had fought for everything I had, worked day and night to prove myself. But now, my own sister was trying to take that from me. She had twisted the narrative in a way that made me question everything I had done, all because of a passing comment that seemed innocent at the time. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how deep the damage went. It wasn't just her whispering behind my back. She was spreading lies to everyone we knew, planting seeds of doubt. People I trusted, colleagues, even old friends, started to treat me differently. I could feel the walls closing in on me. At first, I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just a misunderstanding, that maybe she was going through something personal. But the reality hit me like a cold slap in the face. She was deliberately sabotaging me. I couldn't let this continue. I needed answers. I needed to confront her. But every time I tried, she shut me out. Her sweet, charming smile would be plastered on her face, but I saw the glint of something else behind her eyes. The same eyes that had once been full of warmth now only held coldness. I decided I wasn't going to back down. I needed to find out everything, gather proof, and finally expose her for what she truly was. I started by talking to people who knew her before she had built the perfect life. I found someone who had been close to her in her early years. They mentioned how Emily always had a way of getting what she wanted, how she could manipulate any situation to make herself look good. I couldn't believe it at first, but the more I listened, the more pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. She had always been like this, but I had never seen it. I had been too busy trying to build my own career, my own future, to notice the quiet poison she was spreading around us. I began to see how her jealousy had grown over the years. She had always been the younger, less accomplished sibling, and I thought she admired me, looked up to me. But now I understood that she had been harboring resentment all along, and now that I had something she wanted, she would stop at nothing to bring me down. The more I discovered, the more I realized that Emily wasn't just trying to ruin my reputation for the sake of it. There was something more behind it. Something she had been hiding, something I knew I had to uncover. I started gathering information, piecing together the details, looking into her past, her relationships, and the choices she had made. And then it happened. I found the key to everything. A secret, hidden so deep that no one knew about it, not even our parents. It was her dark, dirty little secret, one that would destroy her if anyone found out. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This was the secret Emily had been running from all these years. She had built a life on lies, carefully crafted to make her look like the perfect sister, the perfect daughter. But everything was about to crumble. I felt a surge of power, of clarity. I wasn't going to let her ruin me. It was time for her to face the consequences of her actions. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to confront her, expose her, and make her pay for what she had done to me. The next few days felt like a blur. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I had worked for, everything I had built, was crumbling before my eyes. Emily's attempts to ruin me had escalated, and now, more than ever, I knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I had found her secret, and I wasn't about to let her destroy me and get away unscathed. The truth would come out, and Emily would face the consequences of her actions. As I started to plan my next move, I realized that I needed to do this carefully. I couldn't be impulsive. If I wanted to expose Emily, I had to make sure I had all the evidence, all the proof to back me up. So, I began piecing everything together, connecting the dots between her lies and the things I had heard over the years. I dug deeper into her past, talked to people who knew her, people who had seen the cracks in the perfect image she had built. It didn't take long for me to uncover more. Emily wasn't just manipulating me. She had been manipulating everyone. She had carefully crafted a version of herself that was so polished, so flawless, that no one ever suspected her true nature. But I could see through it now. Her actions were driven by something deeper than simple jealousy. She wanted to be seen as the perfect daughter, the perfect sister, the perfect wife. But behind that perfect image, there was a web of lies. I had uncovered everything I needed. The secret I had found wasn't just damaging to Emily. It was damaging to the people around her, to the family that had always trusted her. This secret, if it came to light, would tear apart the life she had so carefully constructed. I could feel the weight of it pressing on me, but at the same time, there was a sense of relief. The truth was out there now. It was just a matter of time before everything unraveled. I wasn't going to let Emily destroy me, and I wasn't going to let her destroy anyone else. She had to be held accountable for what she had done. I knew what I had to do. I needed to confront her, expose her lies, and make sure that everyone knew who she really was. I wasn't going to let her get away with playing the victim any longer. As I prepared for the confrontation, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, but also a sense of calm. I had spent so long being manipulated, so long trying to keep the peace, that I had almost forgotten what it felt like to stand up for myself. But now, I remembered. Now I was ready. I called Emily, told her I needed to talk. She agreed, of course, but there was something in her voice that made my stomach twist. She knew something was coming. I wasn't going to let her manipulate the situation this time. I wasn't going to let her control the narrative. This was my story now. I had the truth, and I was going to make sure the world knew it. I sat down at my desk, the phone in front of me, and for the first time in days, I took a deep breath. I had everything I needed. The evidence was clear, the truth was out there, and now, all I had to do was confront Emily. My hands trembled slightly, but my resolve was stronger than ever. This wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. It was about making sure Emily could never do this to anyone again. I dialed her number and waited, each ring growing louder in my mind. When she picked up, her voice was sweet, almost too sweet. "Hey, Sarah, what's up?" she asked, her tone casual, like nothing was wrong. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. "About what happened?" There was a brief silence on the other end before she answered. "Sure, what's going on? Is everything okay?" I could hear the hint of nervousness in her voice, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of knowing how much she had hurt me. No, everything is not okay, I replied. I know what you've been doing. I know the things you've been saying behind my back, and I know about your secret. Her tone shifted immediately, no longer sweet, but guarded. What are you talking about? She asked, a little too quickly. Don't play dumb, Emily. You can't hide from the truth anymore. There was a pause, then the faint sound of her breathing. She wasn't expecting this. I could feel her walls going up. I don't know what you're talking about, Sarah. What do you mean by secret? She asked, trying to sound innocent, but I wasn't fooled anymore. I know about your affair. I know about what you've been hiding from everyone, from our family. And I know you've been trying to ruin my reputation to cover it up, I said, my voice clear and unwavering. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could almost feel her panic seeping through the phone. Finally, she spoke, but her voice was shaky. You don't understand. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she said, her words now tinged with fear. You don't know what it's like. I didn't have a choice. I had to do it. You didn't have a choice? You think ruining my life was the only option? I snapped, anger rising in my chest. You've been lying to everyone, including me, and I'm done letting you get away with it. Please, Sarah, she pleaded, her voice almost a whisper now. You don't have to do this. We're family. This can all be fixed. I can make things right. I could hear the desperation in her voice, but there was no way I was backing down now. You had your chance to make things right, Emily. But instead, you chose to tear me down to protect yourself. Well, that's not happening anymore. There was a long pause, and for a moment, I thought she might hang up. But instead, she spoke again, this time much softer, almost defeated. I'm sorry, she said. I was just scared. I didn't know what else to do. I thought if I made you look bad, no one would notice what I was hiding. That's the problem, I said, my voice cold. You were so busy trying to cover up your mistakes that you didn't care who you hurt along the way. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. I just didn't know how to stop. It's too late for apologies now, I said, my voice firm. You've made your bed, and now you're going to lie in it. I'm done letting you control my life. The truth is coming out, Emily, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. I hung up the phone, feeling a sense of finality. The weight of everything that had happened over the past few weeks lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was in control, and Emily was finally going to face the consequences of her actions. I spent the next few days preparing for the inevitable. The conversation with Emily had left me shaken, but I couldn't afford to let my emotions take over. I had exposed her, but there was still more to do. I needed to make sure she faced the consequences of her actions. I had to gather the final pieces of evidence, make sure everything was airtight. The truth was out there now, but I couldn't stop until I had all the proof. I contacted an old friend of mine, someone who had connections with the people who could help me. They were the ones who had the information I needed, the final clue that would make everything come together. I was going to make sure Emily couldn't talk her way out of this. It felt strange, being so methodical about this after everything had been so personal. But I knew I couldn't afford to be impulsive anymore. The more I worked through the details, the clearer it became that Emily had been planning this for a long time. The affair she had tried to cover up wasn't just a mistake. It was part of a larger web of lies she had woven around herself. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her manipulation went. She hadn't just been trying to destroy me. She had been trying to destroy anyone who could expose her. I knew now that I wasn't the only one she had hurt. There were others, people who had trusted her, people who had been unknowingly pulled into her lies. And I wasn't going to let that slide. As I walked through the process of gathering everything, I felt the weight of it all. This wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. It was about making sure Emily couldn't hurt anyone else. She had been given so many chances to come clean, to be honest. But instead, she had chosen to lie, to hurt, and to manipulate. The time for forgiveness was over. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. After days of sifting through information, everything finally came together. I had the final piece of the puzzle. I couldn't wait any longer. It was time to confront her once and for all. I picked up the phone and called her, knowing that this time, things would be different. She picked up after a few rings, but there was something in her voice that made me pause. It was almost as if she already knew what was coming. Sarah, what is it this time? She asked, her voice sounding too calm, too rehearsed. I didn't hesitate. It's time, Emily, I said, my voice steady. You've done enough damage. The truth is out, and now you have to face the consequences. I'm not going to let you get away with this any longer." There was a long pause on the other end, and for a moment, I thought she might hang up. But instead, she spoke again, and this time, her voice was shaky. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," she said quietly. "You don't understand, Sarah. I was just trying to protect myself." "Protect yourself?" I asked, the anger rising in my chest. "You've been lying to everyone. You've hurt so many people, and now you want to play the victim? You don't get to do that anymore." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but it was hard. Every word she said, every excuse she tried to make, just fueled the fire inside me. "You've made your choices, Emily," I said. "Now, you have to live with them. You can't control this anymore. The truth is coming out, and you can't stop it." There was silence on the other end, and for a brief moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, she was starting to realize the gravity of everything. But then she spoke, her voice small, almost defeated. "I'm sorry," she said, barely above a whisper. "I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know how to stop." I could hear the sincerity in her voice, but it wasn't enough. It was too little, too late. "It doesn't matter anymore, Emily," I said firmly. "What matters now is that I'm taking control, and you're going to have to face the consequences of your actions, no matter how hard it is for you to accept." The line went silent again, and I knew that this conversation, this moment, was the turning point. I had finally found my voice, and there was no going back. Emily had crossed the line, and now it was my turn to take back what she had tried to take from me. I woke up the next morning with a clear sense of purpose. The conversation with Emily had left a bitter taste in my mouth, but it also gave me the clarity I needed. I knew that I couldn't let her manipulate the situation any longer. I had exposed her, but the hardest part was yet to come. Now, it was time for me to take control, to make sure that everyone knew the truth, and that Emily faced the consequences for what she had done. I couldn't let her get away with it anymore. I had thought long and hard about how to do this. The idea of confronting her in front of the family had crossed my mind, but I knew that would only play into her hands. She was good at twisting things, at making people believe her lies. If I was going to expose her, it had to be on my terms. I needed a plan, something that would leave no room for her to escape or manipulate her way out of this. I started by gathering the evidence. Everything I had collected over the past few days, all the little details, the things she thought no one would notice. I had to make sure I had everything in place. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. Emily had been so careful in her deceit, so meticulous in her lies, that she thought no one would ever see through her. But I could see it all now. The web of lies she had spun, the people she had manipulated, the way she had made me the villain to cover up her own mistakes. I was done being her pawn. I was done being the one who always had to clean up her mess. As I reviewed the evidence, I started to feel a sense of power. It wasn't about revenge, at least not in the way I had initially thought. It was about justice. It was about taking back control of my life, of my reputation, and of the narrative that Emily had tried to destroy. I had been quiet for so long, too afraid to stand up for myself. But now I was ready. I couldn't afford to waste any more time. Emily had made her move, and now it was my turn. I decided to call the family together. It wasn't going to be an easy conversation, but it was necessary. I needed them to know the truth, and I wasn't going to let Emily hide behind her lies any longer. I called our parents first. They were shocked when I told them I needed to talk. They had no idea what was going on, and I could hear the confusion in their voices. But they agreed to meet with me, to listen to what I had to say. I could tell they were concerned, but I wasn't going to back down. When we met, I laid everything out for them. I showed them the evidence I had collected, the proof of Emily's lies and manipulation. I explained how she had been spreading rumors about me, how she had tried to ruin my reputation to cover up her own secrets. I watched as their faces changed, as the shock began to settle in. They couldn't believe it. They had always trusted Emily, always seen her as the perfect daughter, the perfect sister. But now, they saw the truth. Emily had been playing a game, and I was the pawn she had tried to use. The look on their faces was one I would never forget. It wasn't anger, at least not at first. It was disbelief, mixed with a sense of betrayal. They didn't know what to say, how to process the information. But I wasn't finished. I had one more thing to say. I turned to them and said, "This isn't just about me. This is about the family. We've all been deceived, and we can't let this continue. I'm done being the scapegoat. It's time for Emily to face the consequences of her actions. The room was silent for a moment, and then my father spoke. "We'll deal with this," he said, his voice firm but calm. "Thank you for telling us the truth." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. I had done what I had to do, but I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There was still a long way to go, and I wasn't sure how things would play out. But one thing was certain. Emily couldn't hide behind her lies anymore. The truth had been exposed, and there was no turning back. I thought things would calm down after I had exposed the truth, but instead, everything seemed to escalate. Emily's face when I confronted her was burned into my memory, her confidence shattering as the reality of what I had uncovered hit her. I had expected some resistance, some anger, but her reaction was far worse. She didn't fight back. She was silent, broken, like she couldn't believe how far things had gone. But I knew it was only the beginning. I had stood up for myself, for my reputation, and now, it was time for the rest of the family to hear the truth. The tension in the house was palpable after our confrontation. I could feel Emily watching me from across the room, but she didn't say a word. She was processing, I guess, but I was done waiting for her to take accountability. I needed to make sure that everyone, especially our parents, understood the full extent of what had been going on. I took the next step, and I called a family meeting. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I wasn't going to let Emily off the hook. The meeting was set, and as the day approached, the weight of it all started to sink in. I wasn't just about to clear my name anymore. I was about to make sure that Emily faced the consequences of her actions. When the day finally came, I gathered everyone, our parents, my husband, even a few of Emily's friends. They all arrived, clearly expecting some sort of reconciliation or apology. But there was none of that. Emily sat in the corner, eyes downcast, while I stood before everyone with the truth in my hands. "I've called you all here today because you deserve to know what's been going on behind closed doors." I began, my voice steady, but with a firmness that surprised even me. For months now, Emily has been undermining me, spreading lies about my career, my relationships, and my integrity. But that's not all. She's been hiding something that could destroy her if it ever came to light. The room was silent, and I could see the confusion and concern in their eyes. My parents were looking at Emily, waiting for her to say something, but she just stared at the floor. "This isn't easy for me to say, but Emily has been having an affair," I continued, each word heavier than the last. "She's been hiding it from everyone, and all the while, she's been trying to make me the villain. She thought if she could ruin my reputation, no one would look at her. But that's not how this works." I paused, allowing the shock to settle. My father's face was pale, and my mother's eyes widened in disbelief. They had always trusted Emily, but I wasn't going to let them live in the dark anymore. I pulled out the evidence, the photos, the messages, everything I had gathered, and I laid it all out on the table. I saw Emily's hands tremble as she finally looked up at me, her face a mask of guilt and regret. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she just stared at the ground. "I know you've been trying to keep this hidden, Emily," I said, my voice calm but unyielding. "But you can't keep lying to everyone, especially not our family. The truth is out now, and there's no way for you to take it back." I looked around the room at everyone's faces, my parents, my husband, even Emily's closest friends. They were all processing the information, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. But I could see that the trust they had in Emily was shattered. "This isn't about me getting revenge," I said, turning to Emily. "It's about accountability. It's about making sure you face the consequences of what you've done. You don't get to destroy people's lives and walk away scot-free." Emily didn't respond, but I could see the tears starting to well in her eyes. I didn't feel sorry for her. She had made her choices, and now she had to deal with the fallout. My parents were still in shock, but they were starting to process everything. They had always believed Emily's lies. They had always believed her version of events. But now, the truth was clear. They weren't sure what to say, and honestly, I didn't expect them to have all the answers. It was a lot for anyone to take in. But in that moment, I knew I had done the right thing. The family dynamic had been poisoned by Emily's deceit for far too long, and it was time for it to end. The silence in the room was thick, but I didn't back down. I stayed strong, knowing that this was the moment when everything would change. Emily would no longer control the narrative. The truth had been revealed, and there was no turning back now. I knew that once I exposed Emily's secret, things would never be the same. The family was divided, and there was no going back. My parents had taken a step back, processing everything I had told them. They were struggling to reconcile the image of their perfect daughter with the reality of what I had uncovered. I could feel the tension in the room, the weight of the truth hanging in the air. Emily, however, was no longer the confident sister I once knew. Her facade had cracked, and all that was left was the fragile, exposed version of herself that she had tried so hard to hide. The family meeting had barely ended when Emily left without a word. She didn't fight back, didn't argue. She simply walked out, leaving behind a room full of people who now knew the truth. I thought about calling her, but I knew it was pointless. The damage had been done, and at this point, I wasn't sure I even cared about her explanation anymore. It wasn't just about her lies anymore. It was about the trust she had shattered in me, in our family. It was about the countless times she had tried to manipulate the people closest to her. I spent the next few days in a kind of stunned silence. There was a strange calmness that came over me after the chaos had settled. I had faced my fears, stood up for myself, and uncovered a truth that no one wanted to hear. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness. Even though I had done the right thing, I still couldn't shake the weight of the betrayal. It was hard to look at Emily the same way again. I had always seen her as the little sister, the one who would always be there for me. Now, I felt like I didn't know her at all. But the hardest part was seeing the effect it had on our family. My parents had always been so proud of Emily. They had always seen her as the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. But now, they were questioning everything they had believed about her. They had always trusted her, and now, that trust was gone. I knew it wasn't easy for them. But in the end, I had to remind myself that this wasn't about me. It wasn't about me being vindictive or angry. It was about standing up for what was right. It was about making sure that Emily could never hurt anyone like this again. A few days later, Emily came back to the house. I wasn't sure what to expect. Part of me thought she would come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. But instead, she seemed distant, almost defeated. She came into the living room, where I was sitting with my parents, and stood silently for a moment. My parents were both looking at her, unsure of how to approach her. I could tell that they didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry," Emily said finally, her voice small and trembling. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I never meant to hurt you, Sarah. I was just scared." I looked at her, trying to process what she had just said. I had expected some kind of apology, but it felt empty, insincere. The damage had been done. Her words, no matter how heartfelt they seemed, couldn't take back what had happened. "You were scared?" I asked, my voice cold. "That's why you tried to ruin my life? Because you were scared?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, her eyes downcast. I could see the guilt in her face, but it wasn't enough. I couldn't just forgive her because she was scared. That wasn't a valid excuse for what she had done. "You've hurt a lot of people, Emily," I continued, my tone hardening. "Not just me, but our family, our friends. You thought you could hide behind your lies, but now you have to face the consequences." She nodded silently, and I could see the tears in her eyes. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity for her, but I quickly pushed it aside. This was not about her feelings. It was about making sure that she understood the full extent of her actions. "You can apologize all you want, but the truth is, I can't trust you anymore. And I don't know if I ever will again," I said, my voice unwavering. Emily didn't speak. She just stood there, tears streaming down her face, before turning and walking out of the room. I didn't chase after her. I didn't try to make things right. Because some things, once broken, can't be fixed. The truth had come out, and no matter how much Emily wanted to take it all back, it was too late. My parents didn't say much after that. They sat in silence, processing everything that had happened. It was clear they were struggling, but I knew that things would never be the same. For better or worse, our family had changed, and there was no going back. The days after the confrontation with Emily were a strange mix of relief and unease. I had exposed the truth, and though I was finally free from the burden of her lies, I couldn't shake the emptiness that lingered. The family was broken, and I knew things would never be the same. Emily had retreated into herself after the family meeting, and I hadn't heard much from her since. I had hoped for some kind of apology, some sort of acknowledgement of the hurt she had caused, but it never came. I didn't expect her to fully understand the damage she had done, but part of me wanted to see that she realized the weight of it all. But that would never happen. Emily was too focused on protecting her own image to truly care about the pain she had caused anyone else. I spent a lot of time thinking about how things had gotten to this point. How had we gone from being close, sharing our childhood memories and dreams, to being strangers, enemies even? It seemed like a lifetime ago that we had laughed together, confided in each other. I had always been there for her, always tried to protect her from the world. But somewhere along the way, that changed. I was no longer the person she could rely on. I was a threat to her carefully curated life. I began to accept that maybe Emily never really saw me as family. To her, I had just been someone in the way of what she wanted. I didn't know what her ultimate goal had been, whether it was money, status, or just power over the family. But I knew I had been a casualty of it all. There was no going back. I had spent so much of my life trying to be the good sister, trying to keep the peace, and in the end, I had lost everything because of it. I had spent years enabling Emily's behavior, ignoring the little things that didn't seem so important at the time. The subtle manipulations, the lies, the things that didn't add up. But I couldn't turn a blind eye anymore. The truth had come out, and now there was no hiding from it. I couldn't help but feel a sense of betrayal. My parents, the ones who had always believed in Emily, had finally seen the truth for themselves. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt hollow. Even though I had taken control, even though I had exposed the lies, I didn't feel proud of what had happened. I felt sad. Sad for the family we used to be, sad for the years we had lost to jealousy and manipulation. Emily had torn us apart, and there was no repairing the damage she had done. I looked at the world around me and realized how much had changed. My career was no longer in jeopardy, my reputation was intact, but I felt different. I had stood up for myself, but at what cost? I had lost the one person I thought I could always count on. My sister was gone, lost to her own lies, to her own ambition. I had spent so many years trying to make things work, trying to be the peacekeeper, the person who kept everything together. But now, I understood that sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you can't fix everything. There are things that can't be healed. The damage Emily had done couldn't be undone, and the pain it had caused couldn't be erased. I had to accept that. As the days went by, I found myself thinking less about the anger and more about what I had lost. The sister I had loved, the family I had once trusted, it was all gone now. And there was no turning back. I knew I had done the right thing, but that didn't make it any easier. The aftermath of the truth was a bitter one, and it left me feeling hollow. Emily might have lost everything in the process, but in the end, so did I. And I wasn't sure if I would ever fully recover from that.